Hey guys, check this out. So today I'm going to be changing injector O-rings on my 7.3 liter diesel. A few nights ago I was leaving home and I was just going up my street and the truck started sputtering and stalling out and then eventually just quit altogether. I had to pull off to the side of the road and I had to walk home. My truck just broke down. So I checked the oil and there was nothing in it at all. Luckily, when this thing runs out of oil, it just quits running. So I don't think I did any major damage to it, but I'm pretty sure it needs injector O-rings because the fuel filter is completely black. So the oil is pushing past the O-rings and getting into the fuel, and that's where it all went. So today I'm going to be changing those out. Okay, so to start with, what I'm going to have to do is pull off this cover. I don't even know why I keep this thing on, but I kind of like it. Gonna have to pull off my air filter. Then that'll expose the valve covers. So I'll show you how to get these off, but they're actually not that bad. You just gotta loosen off the clamp for the dipstick. This box here comes off with a couple screws. Gives you more access to those back valve cover bolts. There's one back there that's sort of tricky, but once you do it a couple times, it's not so hard. The ones on this side is a lot easier, but you'll see that. And then there's just a couple harness connectors. Again, that's really easy. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull everything off, and then once the valve covers are off, I'll come back. Oh yeah, and one of the first things you have to do when you've got your air filter and this cover off is remove this intake right here. There's just two 10mm bolts, a clamp here, and then there's a connection right down here. Also, I'm removing my Y pipe, but you don't have to. Don't lose this little O-ring here. It's very important for the seal. Now I've got these goofy fuel lines here that come up over my valve covers, so I'm going to have to take those off. Normally you're not going to have that. You're going to have some hard lines that run through the valley up to the front. But in my case, I have to remove these. You're going to have to remove this PCV thing or whatever it is, the breather. Just a big Phillips. There's a screw up here, and I think there's supposed to be another screw. Mine's only got the one. So that's an 8mm. Got this vacuum line on it, but I like to just leave it up like that. Okay. So don't want to bend that too much, so let's get rid of the bunch of 13s. Okay, now I can just lift this whole harness and shove it in the valley. Now I've got access here for the entire valve cover. Let's get rid of this bracket first. It comes off. I need my ratchet. So this valve cover is pretty easy. Just pull it right off like that. Once I got the valve cover off, I like to remove the valve cover gaskets just because it gets it all out of the way. You have to undo the clips at each injector, and then you have to pull off the glow plug wires. Here, let me get a light on. Okay, that should be better. I have a light on the camera. So this here, that's the glow plug connector. Just pops right out. And then these clips here, you gotta be pretty gentle with them, but they're not too bad. Just push them down. There. So you gotta do that on all four, and then you can lift. No, I can't get the focus right now. Can't. Then you can lift the valve cover gaskets right off. And the last injector on this side. Now you can get these valve cover gaskets right up out of the way. Now you have no wires or anything holding you up. I'm supposed to remove these oil deflectors, but I think you can just pull out your injector hold down bolts, and they should give you enough room to pull this up out of the way. So I'm going to try it without removing these first. So let's see what happens. I believe those are 8mm. But yeah, they're not super tight. So to get these injectors out, you need a little pry bar. You have to move. I don't know if you can see this properly, but this retainer here, you move up because this hole is slotted and it's a little bit bigger on this side. It'll pass this other bolt. So you just move this up and then you can pry. Yeah, so I think you can just get under the retainer like that. Oh, and that goes flying. But see, it just popped out. And there's your injector. And you want to make sure that your crush washer comes with the injector. Now, while your injector's out, it's a good time to pull your glow plug, because you're going to have to take those out to get all the oil that dropped down into the cylinder. Like you're going to have to crank over the engine with the glow plug out so that it blows all the oil out through that hole. So since the injector's out, it's a lot easier to get to them. Yeah, they're 10mm. So just pull out your glow plug. Then there's no chance of starting up the truck with oil in the cylinder, because you'll remember, oh, I got to put the glow plugs in. I better crank it over before I start the thing up. See little bits and pieces of O-ring. Ah, here we go. This O-ring's destroyed. I don't know if you can see this here. Okay, you see that right in there? That's evidence of the O-ring. This one, I can see a little bit of pink right in the bottom there and up there. This one's really bad. This one, maybe some. This one probably a lot, yeah. So you check that out. That's really not great. So I'm gonna have to clean that out really, really well because you don't want that getting into your fuel or your oil supply. Got this really great set of cotton swabs, so I'm gonna get in there with these to clean out those injector cups and the holes where the injectors go down in. So I just spent some time cleaning those bores out for the injectors, and I think they all look pretty good now. So I'd say they're ready for the injectors to go in. So I'm gonna replace all these seals, and then they're ready to go. Okay, so these are the new injector seal kit that I have from Alliant Power. So basically what I did was I just removed the old seals and cleaned up the injectors, removed any dirt that I saw, and now I'm going to go ahead and put these new seals in. And I think you're going to want to install these by hand without any tools. Do these have a top and bottom? I do not think so. Do this sort of kind of like a piston ring. Just kind of push it around, get it in its groove. It's this square cut guy. Want this down all the way. There, just spinning it around, making sure that it's seated all the way down. Now it's this sort of purplish one, and I'm noticing that these O-rings are much, much stiffer than the ones that were in my other kit. So hopefully that's a good sign that they're different. Maybe I should grease these up. Just putting a little bit of grease on this to help it slide over. There, that's in. So I've got my steel, my square cut, and this sort of purple one. Now it's this goofy looking sort of V-shaped one. This is the most important one, I'd say. Okay, that's in. It's very, very different than the last ones I used. Bottom guy. And then don't forget your little copper dude. Okay, now when it comes to the copper washer, I think you're supposed to put the single raised section towards the injector cup and then this flatter section towards the injector body. So you can just put this over the injector tip and press down. Yeah, I'm going to slam this in now. So I've got one full side done, and those are torqued down. And the hold down bolts, you have to torque them to 120 inch-pounds. I think you can do 10 foot-pounds. I'm not sure if that's like what it relates to or whatever, but 120 inch-pounds I think is the correct torque. So now I'm going to go over and do this side. It's a little bit trickier just because that back injector, the clearance between that and the heater box or whatever that is really tight. But again, it's not super bad. There's a bolt back there. It's a little bit tricky to get to, and then the dipstick tube is just one 10 mil. And then this bracket comes off. I just turn the dipstick out of the way. It turns pretty easily, and then the whole bracket that holds the whole thing comes off with those two nuts, and the studs are actually bolts for the valve cover. Okay, so that's all the bolts out of this thing. Get this valve cover off. On this side I've got a different style of valve cover gasket with these clips, and they're actually a little bit nicer to deal with. So if you have this style, you just pull these little wire things down and unplug it. Okay, so the injectors from the other side are out now, and I guess I'll go over just the damage of the O-rings, because last time I think the video was kind of out of focus. So I don't know if you can see how worn away that O-ring is. So I'm not too sure what that's caused by, but that could be from installation, or right before this whole incident of losing the oil, I had a fuel pressure problem, and the truck was running with like below 10 psi of fuel pressure. So I think maybe that got things kind of rolling along with the failure, because then I heard that if you have really low fuel pressure, it'll damage your O-rings. So maybe that's something to do with it. Also, it's hard to really show, but these O-rings are extremely soft. Like, it feels, sorry, I should keep the camera steady. It feels like a elastic band. It's hard to describe, but it's like, you know, like a gummy worm consistency. And the new ones from Alliant Power, they're hard, like almost a plastic feeling. So maybe these Chinese O-rings are just of really shitty quality. And those things fit perfectly. Okay, so I've got the injectors all back in. I've got them all torqued down and I'm ready to reassemble. But at this stage what I do is I'm just going to loosely put the valve covers back in place. Just sit them here, and I might put a bolt just in the top. And I'm going to crank over the engine. What that's going to do is, since all the glow plugs are out, it's going to push all the oil and fuel that fell down into the cylinder out. And with the valve covers on, it just should keep the mess down a bit. And it's glow plug time now, so I'm going to go ahead and reinstall my glow plugs. It's a good time to test them, but I know these are still good. Okay, now it's all back together except for that cover, because if I have to take anything back apart, I don't want to have that on there. So basically, it's going to take a long time to start up. It's got no oil in the H-pop, and the injector, like the oil galleys in the head, are empty. Also the fuel is going to be empty, so it's going to take a while of cranking to build up pressures. So it's going to be a little bit, I guess, frustrating, because it's not going to fire right up. And also, when it does fire up, it's going to run really rough. It can take quite a while for all the air to get out of the system. So what I'm going to do is now just crank it and see if I can get it started. Okay, so I'm going to be watching my fuel pressure and my oil pressure gauge. Got oil pressure, my fuel pressure is on. Okay, now I'm going to let my glow plug cycle, because it's really cold out. I'm going to let my glow plugs go once more. It's showing some fuel pressure up here, 44 psi and dropping, so maybe that's a good sign. There we go. It's gonna run really rough for a bit. Okay, so I'm on a test drive now. Fuel pressure is good, 78 psi. It's driving pretty normally. So I'm just gonna drive around the block a bit, and then I think I'll change the oil because got a lot of fuel down into onto the pistons, plus needs an oil change, so it's just a good time to do it.